Radio broadcasts phonograph receiver. Employees of Doubleday, Page & Company dancing to the music from the combined radio phonograph unit designed in the radio broadcast laboratory. The Roberts circuit has proved the most popular for home construction of any non-radiating set ever designed. Complete plans have been made for assembling the receiver very compactly and efficiently, so that the panel will fit into any type of phonograph now on the market. Radio equipment for the hotel. Among the many hotels in the country to install radio service for guests is the Biltmore in New York. Individual receivers are used with A and B supply and loudspeaker all contained in one cabinet. An attendant is tuning the receiver for Marion Benda, Left, and Mary Mulhern, musical comedy actresses. Pachyderm and microphone. Station WJZ New York recently broadcast the sounds and scenes of the circus. Dolly, a 2-year-old elephant, is doing the right thing by the radio audience. Fitting the radio to the radiator. This photograph shows a receiver placed on a metal cabinet which fits over the radiator. Ordinarily, the radiator, especially in small homes and apartments, is somewhat uneconomical because the space it occupies cannot be used for anything else. The cabinet contains a humidor, which moistens the air, and the shelf is insulated, which keeps it from absorbing heat. With this cabinet, made by the Dixie Metal Products Company at Birmingham, Alabama, the radiator is made to do double duty. The new Ferrand Godley loudspeaker and Carter self-supporting loop are also shown. Summertime radio. The Super Autodyne is made portable by use of the Lynch lead, which connects the filaments to the automobile battery. The Crosley Musicone is connected by a long cord so that the receiver may be left in the car and the speaker taken to any convenient spot nearby. It is growing more and more fashionable to make a portable set a part of motoring and camping equipment. The Eveready Trio, whose artistic playing is frequently heard during the programs of the Eveready Hour, broadcast each Tuesday from 9 to 10. From left to right, they are Alex Hackle, violinist, Edward Berge, pianist, Jacques Depoule, cellist. Luke Hill. No, the small boy, who is all of 7, isn't impersonating Oliver Twist and asking for more. As a singer, he was the hit of the radio show given recently for the benefit of the City of Childhood, maintained by the Loyal Order of Moose for the dependent children of their deceased brothers. It was presented through WJJD. Do a Good Turn Daily. Picked members from a number of crack scout troops assembled around a radio set to receive instructions in hooking up and operating the one-dial Mohawk set, which is to be distributed through the Chicago Tribune to the blind of that city. The boys are installing the sets and instructing the sightless owners how to use them. The tipped microphone. Giuseppe De Luca, baritone of the Metropolitan Opera Company, toying with a broadcasting microphone. When the microphone is placed in this position, it becomes practically inoperative. Radio listeners in Germany. Broadcasting in the German Republic has not attained as great popularity as in either England or the United States. England is very completely served by a system of master stations and small local relay stations. The master stations in the larger centers originate programs of their own and relay programs from the London studio of the broadcasting company. This system, perfectly suited to England, could hardly be applied to American conditions. American stations have been tied together for programs from WEAF New York, but the tie-up has been usually with stations only as far west as the Mississippi, because of the difference in time between New York and the Central and Far West. The German enthusiasts here are using a receiver which is incorporated in a table lamp. The loop is covered. Apparatus at the Glasgow station of the British Broadcasting Company. Many of the switches in the foreground are for controlling the wire lines between the various stations. English broadcasting apparatus is not very different from that used by most American stations. One of the British stations indeed uses apparatus manufactured by an American company. The USS Shenandoah. During the recent transcontinental trip of the Shenandoah, the naval radio operators aboard the ship were in constant communication through their shortwave transmission with radio amateurs in all parts of the country, as well as with the Naval Laboratory at Bellevue, near Washington. A wavelength of 80 meters was used. The cooperation extended by the amateurs in this instance was one of many examples of a similar sort. Inside the crater of Mount Vesuvius. Professor Rogati of Milan, with 2 assistants, transported a radio receiver inside the crater of this famous old volcano to test the radio receiving qualities of this somewhat sparsely populated area. The tests seemed to prove that there was no radio reception near the eruptive cone of the volcano, while at a distance of 300 feet from the cone, reception was rather poor. The experimenters, as the photograph shows, wore masks as a protection against the stifling gases from the erupting cone. The masts of the new British station, which will soon be opened at Daventry. This station will use 1,600 meters and about 25 kilowatts, and will originate programs of its own as well as broadcasting programs from the main London studio of the British Broadcasting Company. The site of the station is 600 feet above sea level, and the ground itself is about 300 feet above the surrounding territory. The 2 masts are 500 feet high and 800 feet apart. The Chelmsford mast of the experimental station 5XX of the British Broadcasting Company. The usual broadcast wavelengths of the various English stations are much the same as in this country, but 5XX uses a 1,600 meter wavelength and a power of about 25 kilowatts. The Broadcasting Company engineers were testing with this station the possibilities of using a high-powered station located at a central point, broadcasting programs to be picked up anywhere in England with a crystal receiver. John L. Reinartz of South Manchester, Connecticut. Mr. Reinartz, using a wavelength of 21 meters and low power, recently established communication with an amateur on the Pacific coast at noon. This remarkable feat showed strikingly the possibilities of shortwave radio work. The winner of the Hoover Cup for 1924, Bartholomew Molinari, owner of amateur radio station 6AWT, San Francisco. The transmitter is one 250-watt tube, shown on the panel in the lower left. Note the wall map of the world, dotted with colored pins, showing the various parts of the world in which 6AWT has been heard. 10 years ago, distance records such as these would have been considered an absolute impossibility. The USS Arkansas with her battery of big guns and radio antennas. At least 7 separate antennas can be seen in the picture. All the naval radio communication is carried on in the longer wavelengths with cipher codes. The larger ships have complete radio telephone equipment, which is chiefly used for communication between ships over short distances. The experimental shortwave antenna of KDKA at East Pittsburgh. The high wooden poles to which the fan antenna is attached forms the experimental 309-meter antenna, from which regular programs are radiated. The shorter vertical pole above the roof of the building is the shortwave antenna. The radio cabin of the Arcturus. The radio equipment is controlled by the Independent Wireless Telegraph Company. The Arcturus is a wooden ship built by the Shipping Board during the War for the Alaskan Trade. William H. Eccles, demonstrating at a lecture at the Imperial College of Science in London, a circuit on which he has spent much time, which is to bring about a new method of wireless communication. The sending apparatus produces easily recognizable musical chords at the receiving station. The most common chords would be assigned to the vowel sounds. Dr. Eccles is professor of applied physics and electrical engineering at the London Technical College, and a well-known authority on radio. Transradio. The imposing towers of the new international station at Monte Grande, Argentina. The powerhouse and masts are the center of the largest international radio telegraph station ever erected in South America. The towers are about 690 feet high. The smaller towers in the left foreground form an anchorage for the down leads from the antenna. This station is for communication on long wavelengths and high power. The beam method of transmitting has not been applied to this station. The powerhouse at Transradio. The most interesting thing in this photograph is the antenna radiation meter, which registers up to 1,200 amperes. Energy from large radio telegraph stations such as this is radiated in every direction, and much of it serves no useful purpose. Senator Marconi believes that beam transmission of radio signals on shortwaves will do much to alter the whole course of long-distance radio communication. A wireless-equipped lifeboat aboard the SS Orbita. The British Board of Trade has ruled that to every 10 lifeboats aboard large passenger ships, there shall be one lifeboat with radio transmitting and receiving equipment. The operator has a small cabin way up forward. The transmitter has a range of about 100 miles. A small 2-wire antenna is used. In the bow of the boat is the rectangular loop used in the direction finder equipment. Lieutenants McCormick and Flood, United States Army, looking over their receiving apparatus, which was of considerable aid during the recent national balloon elimination race. The race was won by Ward T. Van Orman. Broadcasting stations near the Air Course broadcast special weather instructions and meteorological information to the racers. At Wellesley College, Wellesley, Massachusetts, some of the advanced students in the physics department are learning something about radio. The essentials of a 50-watt continuous wave transmitter are being assembled. Kei Inukai, Japanese Minister of Communications, listening to a Tokyo radio program with members of his family. Science invades the church. The microphone, an excellent symbol of modern progress, suspended over the famous carved pulpit of Notre Dame de Paris. The pulpit was designed by Violette Leduc. The microphone is not for broadcasting, but for the public address system which has just been installed in this famous old cathedral. A marine radio operator at work. Senior Operator J.T. Williams and Captain John Roberts of the SS Homeric. Part of the tube transmitter is visible. Those who want to gain as much radio experience as possible often spend several years or more as a marine radio operator. Operators, when they are granted their government licenses, are thoroughly examined on their knowledge of radio theory and practice. Practical experience aboard ship is very valuable to the man who wants to have a thorough knowledge of radio. Great numbers of prominent radio men have graduated from the Marine Operator class to positions of considerable radio success. The amateur radio operator learns much about the fundamentals of radio without leaving his own home. He can gain much from a study of good radio textbooks and magazines, and more by practical experiments with radio. The study of radio at home, although it cannot substitute for study at a technical school or college, can do much toward building a radio groundwork. The incorrect way of tuning a regenerative receiver. Rotating the tickler or regenerative dial causes bird-like tweets to be radiated from your antenna. The effect on the neighbors is well known. The correct way of tuning a regenerative receiver. Here, the tickler dial is turned nearly to 0. The tuning is mainly accomplished with the condenser dial, the first one on the left. Once a station has been received, the regenerative dial may be advanced, but not beyond the point where squeals are produced. In some receivers, the left dial is the tickler, and the right the antenna tuning dial. A glance inside the cabinet will usually make this point clear.